save for the usual cleaning. The police, well, they took a look round yesterday at Miss Montrose's insistence, but as there was no sign of violence, you understand, why, there was not much for them to do.
"A pity," remarked Holmes. "They might at least have refrained from leaving their muddy footprints upon the very places which interest me."
Phelps coughed uneasily. "If you will tell me where you wish to go, Mr. Holmes."
"We shall begin with the green room in which Miss Montrose waited for your missing soloist," said Holmes. "After that, we will visit Orloff's dressing room and those portions of the corridor through which he is known to have passed."
The green room was a large, rather shabby apartment, furnished with a few worn armchairs, a sofa, a long table, and an assortment of battered music stands. A mirror, much clouded with age, hung above the mantelpiece. The air was faintly tinged with the odours of dust, grease paint, and gas.
"This is where Miss Montrose heard Orloff in conversation with his visitor," said Holmes, moving slowly about the room.
He went first to the door and examined the threshold and the outer side of the panel with his lens, running his long fingers lightly over the surface. Then he crossed to the small window which overlooked a narrow alley. "It is upon the first floor," he remarked, throwing up the sash and leaning out into the chill night air. "A sheer drop of some 12 feet to the stones beneath. No convenient water pipes, Watson, no stack of boxes, nothing to tempt a man to climb. We may leave this as an improbable exit. You keep the door locked between performances, Mr. Phelps."
"Always," said the manager promptly. "There are far too many gentlemen who bring their friends backstage as it is, without allowing the public to roam the place."
"And on Friday afternoon?"
It was open during the rehearsal, of course, so that the players might rest between pieces, but I am certain that no authorised person came in that way while I was about. The fellow who importuned Mr. Orloff must have slipped in by the stage door. I have spoken very sharply to Wainwright about it."
"Wainwright is the porter who admitted us."
"The same. He swears the stranger showed him a card and said he was expected. One cannot keep out everyone in a city like London." Phelps sighed. "We have had our share of cranks and enthusiasts who will insist on pouring out their souls to the artists."
Holmes had been moving about the room in his usual noiseless fashion, stooping now and again to examine some minute speck upon the carpet, then rising to peer at a mark upon the wall or the leg of a chair. At one point he knelt and measured with his pocket rule the distance between 2 faint indentations in the pile. "You have had the carpet swept since Friday?" he inquired.
"Of course, Mr. Holmes. We cannot leave the place dirty between concerts."
"Of course not," said Holmes, with a sigh that suggested his views on domestic hygiene did not coincide with the manager's. "Well, we must content ourselves with such traces as remain. Let us pass on to Orloff's dressing room."
We followed Phelps along another passage, narrower and more dimly lit, until he paused at a door upon the left. "This is it," he announced, producing a key. "We keep it locked now, as Miss Montrose requested that nothing be disturbed." He turned the key and threw open the door. The room into which we stepped was small and plainly furnished, a dressing table with a mirror, a wooden chair, a washstand, and some hooks upon the wall for hanging clothes. Upon the chair lay a suit of black evening dress, neatly brushed and folded. On the table stood a small leather dressing case, closed. Beside it, in its open wooden case, rested a violin of noble aspect, its dark amber varnish glowing dully in the dim light.
Holmes gave a little exclamation of interest and strode at once to the instrument. He bent over it, his long fingers hovering above without actually touching, much as a devout man might approach a relic. "A genuine Guarnerius del Gesù," he murmured. "Observe the arching of the belly, Watson, the boldness of the F-holes. The varnish has suffered somewhat from hard usage, but the proportions are exquisite. I have heard of Orlov's fiddle. It is said to be one of the finest in Europe."
"You are a connoisseur, Mr. Holmes?" asked Phelps, surprised.
"In a small way," Holmes replied lightly. "Music is one of the few arts which can hold my attention for more than 5 consecutive minutes. It is, however, not the violin, but the absence of its owner which concerns us at present." He turned from the table and began his usual methodical examination of the room. The floor was of worn linoleum, upon which the faint marks of many boots could be seen. Holmes went upon hands and knees at once, crawling about with his nose almost grazing the surface, his lens flashing in the lamplight. "This, I gather," he said, "is a private room. No one uses it but Orlov when he performs here."
"That's correct," said Phelps. "Each of our principal soloists has his own dressing room. The keys are kept in my office between engagements."
"And since Friday you have not allowed anyone to enter?"
"No one but myself and Miss Montrose when we were searching for him. The police came yesterday and poked about a bit, but I was here with them all the time. They didn't find anything, needless to say."
Holmes's eye gleamed. The phrase "needless to say" is one which should be abolished from the English tongue, Mr. Phelps. Nothing in this world is needless to say until it has been both said and examined. Ah! He had paused beside the washstand, upon which stood a chipped ewer and basin, a cake of yellow soap, and a damp towel hung over the rail. Holmes sniffed at the towel, then took it between finger and thumb. "Wet at one end only, and stiff with dried soap," he remarked. "Used to wash the hands hastily, then thrown down. But the water in the ewer is scarcely discoloured. Our Mr. Orlov was not over-lavish in his ablutions." He moved to the dressing table and examined the leather case. It was locked. "Do you object to my forcing this?" he asked of Phelps.
The manager hesitated. "Well, strictly speaking, Mr. Holmes, I suppose we ought to wait."
"For a man who has already been missing 3 days." Holmes's tone was icy. "Do you think he will return to reproach us for having safeguarded his interests too zealously? Come, Mr. Phelps, if there is anything you prefer should not meet the public eye, better that we know of it here and now than that some sensational reporter should drag it forth later."
Phelps coloured and looked away. "Very well," he muttered. "I wash my hands of it, Mr. Holmes. Do as you think best."
"With pleasure," said Holmes. From his pocket he produced a small roll of implements, and in a trice had selected one which he applied delicately to the lock. There was a faint click, and the case sprang open.
Its contents were meagre enough: a shaving brush, a small razor, a bottle of cheap cologne, a well-worn Russian-English dictionary, a sheaf of papers tied with string, and a flat leather purse.
Holmes opened the purse first. It contained 3 sovereigns in gold, some silver, and a number of coins of foreign origin. "So much for the theory of sudden enforced flight due to poverty," he observed. "Our man was not rich, but he was not destitute." He next turned to the tied papers, which he untied and spread upon the table. Most were letters, written in a bold, sprawling hand upon thin foreign paper. Others were bills from London tradesmen, bootmakers, tailors, and the like. Holmes glanced rapidly through the letters, his face expressionless, save for the deepening line between his brows. "All in Russian, save for this one," he muttered. "Ha, this may interest us." He held up a single sheet, written in English upon a cheap, lined stationery. The handwriting was cramped and irregular, the spelling atrocious. "Mr. Orlov, sir, this is to remind you that we know what happened in Odessa. We have been patient. You have had time enough to make your fortune in London. Now we demand what is due. Come alone to the corner of Beak Street and Hollandby Court at 6:30 on Friday evening, or we shall know that you mean to cheat us, and we have ways of making the truth known, to the police, to your friends, to the newspapers. You were not alone that night, and there are others who would be glad to hear the story, from those who cannot forget.
There was no signature. Holmes's eyes were shining now with that cold fire which I had learned to associate with his keenest excitement. Odessa again, he murmured, the word Miss Montrose overheard, and this curious allusion to a night which someone cannot forget. Mr. Phelps, have you ever heard Orlov speak of any incident in Odessa?
Never, replied the manager nervously. I knew he came from Russia, of course, and that he had played in some orchestra there, but he is not a communicative man. He kept himself to himself.
Holmes continued to scan the note. Hollenby Court, he repeated. I know the place, Watson. A narrow cul-de-sac off Beak Street, frequented by the less reputable members of our foreign colony. And the hour named, 6:30 on Friday evening. At that very time, Orlov is seen in heated conversation with a stranger in this very corridor, then again by Mr. Phelps upon the stairs, and then no more. The connection is tolerably clear.
You think he kept this appointment, then? I asked. He kept some appointment, Watson, whether precisely as the writer of this epistle planned it or not. Observe, the letter is undated, but the reference to Friday shows that it must have been written within a few days of that day. It was not destroyed, as a man would often destroy a compromising communication. Therefore, Orlov either intended to keep it as evidence of blackmail or simply stuffed it into his case without thinking. Considering the man's artistic temperament, as Miss Montrose described it, I favour the latter.